So the entire thing at Windsor basically falls apart over a single word. And the word that started it all was grandmother. Princess Charlotte, who was 9 years old by the way, sits down at what's supposed to be a completely ordinary private family lunch. And within minutes, she delivers a sentence so calmly devastating that nobody in the room knows how to recover. The king is there. William and Catherine are there with all three kids. Camilla has been keeping the conversation deliberately light because she knows recent tensions have made even private meals feel sensitive, and for a while everyone plays their part. Then Camilla casually describes herself as belonging to the children's grandparent generation, and Charlotte looks up from whatever she was doing and answers with this absolutely surgical calm. She says she already knows who her grandmothers are, and she will not call Camilla grandmother. The room doesn't erupt. It goes terrifyingly quiet. That's the detail that sticks with me, honestly. Nobody gasps, nobody scrambles to fix it, nobody jumps in with a distraction. The silence just stretches out, and in that silence everyone understands what just happened. Charlotte has made a deliberate choice, and Camilla knows it. Before we get into what this actually means for the family going forward, make sure to hit subscribe on Crown Front so you don't miss any updates on this story. Alright, let's unpack this. So here's where it gets really interesting. Charles hears his granddaughter say this, and his first instinct as both grandfather and monarch is to ask why she said it. His voice stays low, but the question carries weight because he's the king, and he's probably expecting some kind of embarrassed apology, or at least a childlike explanation that can be smoothed over. That's not what he gets. Charlotte answers that some family names have to be earned by how people make you feel. That's a 9-year-old saying that. Not coached, not rehearsed, not throwing a tantrum, just stating a principle, and that asking if she can leave the table. Catherine nods. Charlotte pushes her chair back, and the scrape against the floor is apparently louder than anything spoken that entire afternoon. Camilla remains frozen. Charles stares at William, suddenly aware that no palace command can undo what just happened. And William, he's not angry at Charlotte. He's watching his daughter carefully instead of correcting her, which tells you everything about where this is actually coming from. Catherine follows Charlotte into the corridor, and that's when the real story starts coming out. This was not the first time Camilla had made her uncomfortable. Weeks earlier, there had been a private encounter that changed everything, and Charlotte had been carrying it in silence ever since. The palace could survive one uncomfortable sentence at lunch. But what Charlotte tells her mother behind that closed door transforms the whole situation from a family embarrassment into the consequence of something that had been building for months. For Charlotte, the argument is not really about a title. For Camilla, that's exactly why it hurts so much. Catherine sits beside her daughter after the luncheon and doesn't begin with discipline. She asks what grandmother actually means to her, and the answer comes slowly. Trust, safety, stories. Someone who makes you feel protected rather than pressured. Charlotte has grown up around royal titles where words like queen and heir shape both public duty and private identity. But to a child, family language carries a different kind of weight. Catherine understands that distinction immediately and refuses to turn her daughter's feelings into a performance. Meanwhile, Camilla is in another room feeling the wound from a completely different angle. She tells Charles she can tolerate hostile headlines and years of public comparison, but she cannot pretend that rejection from his granddaughter means nothing. The king tries to reassure her, but he pauses before saying Charlotte will come around. That hesitation cuts deeper than he probably intended. Camilla has spent years seeking acceptance inside his family, and the younger generation represents something that ceremonies cannot guarantee, which is private belonging. William finds Catherine later and asks the question both of them have been avoiding. Did Charlotte mention Diana? Catherine confirms that their daughter has become curious about the grandmother she never knew, especially after seeing photographs and hearing memories from her father. Then she adds something more troubling. Charlotte is not rejecting Camilla because Diana has become idealized in her mind. During a private conversation after the luncheon, the girl described an exchange weeks earlier in which she felt Camilla dismissed something emotionally important to her. William stops out Charlotte's bedroom before entering. His hand reaches the door handle, then falls away. The future king understands that royal harmony is no longer the issue. His daughter has been pulled into an adult history she never created, and he has to decide whether to speak as a prince protecting order or as a father protecting trust. When he finally enters, Charlotte tells him everything changed during a palace ceremony weeks before the Windsor lunch. There had been no argument, no dramatic walkout, no formal confrontation. There was only a quiet room, a photograph of Diana, and one sentence that Charlotte carried away with her. Adults forgot the exchange almost immediately. Charlotte did not. What Camilla considered a harmless correction settled differently in the young princess's mind because it touched the one relationship she can know only through stories, and suddenly made those stories feel as though they needed defending. Charlotte had spent several afternoons with William asking about old family photographs and the people behind them. Catherine encouraged those conversations because she wanted all three children to understand their history as a family before they understood it as monarchy. A private family heritage presentation at Windsor was simply an informal gathering where photographs and personal objects from earlier generations were discussed away from public ceremony. William kept Diana's memories simple and personal. He described her as their grandmother, spoke about her warmth, and never use the past as a weapon against anyone living. Charlotte paused beside one photograph and quietly called her grandmother Diana. Camilla entered during the exchange and heard the words. She hesitated, then told the young princess she should not become too attached to people she never knew when she had family around her. Now the sentence was calm. Its effect was not. Charlotte looked down, closed the small album she had been studying, and asked William whether they could continue another day. He immediately knew something had shifted. Later, the prince told Camilla that his daughter was old enough to understand tone, but far too young to carry the weight of decades of family pain. The queen consort insisted she had only wanted Charlotte grounded in the present. But Catherine eventually learned there had been another moment nobody knew about. Charlotte had left the room, then returned quietly because she had forgotten a bracelet. Before entering fully, she heard Camilla telling an aide that constant references to Diana could become confusing for the children. The aide said little, but Charlotte heard enough. To her, the meaning felt brutally clear. Remembering her grandmother was becoming a problem other people wanted managed. Charlotte kept that hurt to herself for weeks. She never confronted Camilla, never demanded an explanation, never told William what she had overheard. Instead, she reached a private conclusion. If accepting one grandmother meant weakening the place of another, she would refuse the newer name completely. William listened as his daughter finally recounted the forgotten bracelet moment. He lowered his eyes and placed the family photograph in his hand face down on the desk. The Windsor luncheon had not been impulsive disobedience. It had been the end of a decision Charlotte had been carrying in silence. By evening, the issue was no longer whether Charlotte had behaved badly. William wanted to know why a child had been placed at a position where defending a dead grandmother felt necessary. And Camilla was about to hear that question directly. William does not summon advisors. He does not request a formal family meeting. He asks Camilla to speak privately, waits until the door closes, and tells her there will be no discussion of Charlotte's matters until they discuss what happened first. Camilla arrives expecting pressure to repair the luncheon. Instead, she finds a father who believes his daughter has been carrying an emotional burden created by adults, and he refuses to let royal hierarchy bury it. William keeps Charles out of the room deliberately. The monarch's presence would turn the exchange into a question of rank and royal precedence, which is exactly what the prince wants to avoid. This is not about who outranks Charlotte. It is about who has the right to define her private feelings. Camilla expects him to demand an apology for the humiliation at Windsor. Instead, he recounts the photograph, the forgotten bracelet, and the second remark his daughter overheard. William places both palms on the back of a chair, but does not sit. Camilla remains seated as he asks the question she has been dreading. Did you tell her that remembering her grandmother was confusing? The queen answers carefully that the comment was never intended for Charlotte to hear. His expression hardens. Intention, he says, does not erase impact. His voice remains controlled until he explains what the words created. Charlotte now believes that accepting Camilla emotionally would mean betraying Diana. Camilla's restraint finally cracks. She tells William that she has spent years being judged against a woman who died long before the current family structure took shape. Every memory of Diana, she admits, can make her feel as though there is no emotional space left for anyone else. She says she reacted badly because she feared Charlotte's growing attachment to those stories would eventually turn into another comparison she could never win. The prince listens, but he does not retreat. His daughter, he says, was never asking Camilla to compete. William then draws the line: nobody has forbidden Charlotte from caring for her, and nobody will encourage hostility. But no, one will command the girl to use a family word she does not mean. Camilla asks whether that is merely his opinion or a new household rule. His answer lands with brutal simplicity. For my children, Catherine and I decide. Camilla falls silent. The anger gives way to humiliation because she understands what that boundary means. Charles may be king, but forcing his granddaughter to manufacture affection would make royal authority look cruel rather than strong. Within the hour, he hears exactly what William has said and asks to meet his son alone. Camilla had expected the king's authority to restore order. But Charles now faces a choice no crown can make easy: protect his wife's dignity or recognize his son's right to protect his daughter. Charles has spent a lifetime inside a system built on titles, precedence, and obligation. Yet the crisis before him cannot be resolved by any of them. He can tell Charlotte where to stand. He can determine which ceremony she attends. He can establish how members of the household formally address the queen. What he cannot do without consequence is order his granddaughter to feel a bond she does not feel. And William knows that. Before entering the room, Charles meets William alone, without aides or private secretaries, because he wants no record of hesitation surrounding what has become an intensely personal decision. The king begins by calling the dispute a threat to family unity, not a challenge to Camilla's rank. Royal protocol can control public conduct, but William makes clear that Charlotte will follow those rules whenever required. She will be respectful. She will behave correctly. The word grandmother, however, belongs to private affection, not constitutional duty. Charles admits the refusal has wounded Camilla more deeply than she has said publicly or privately. William does not dismiss that pain, but his answer is immediate. Charlotte was wounded first. His daughter was too young to understand decades of royal tension, and had no power when an adult made her feel that remembering Diana was somehow disloyal. The prince insists that correcting Charlotte now would teach the wrong lesson, that the strongest person in the room gets to define everyone else's emotions. Charles feels the conflict tightening around him. He loves his wife, and knows how long she has fought to feel secure inside the family. Yet he also knows his granddaughter will remember what happens next. The monarch asks whether Catherine truly supports William's position. He answers yes. Together they've decided that Charlotte will use Camilla's proper royal form of address when protocol requires it. But privately she will never be ordered to call her grandmother. George and Louis will be given the same freedom to let those relationships develop naturally. Charles removes his glasses and sets them beside a clothes folder. Silence stretches between father and son. He finally says he will not compel Charlotte. The decision is quiet, but its meaning is enormous. Royal structure remains under his authority, yet William and Catherine retain control over their children's emotional upbringing. Even a sovereign cannot command trust without risking the very family bond he's trying to protect. Charles believes the matter can still remain behind Windsor's closed doors. That belief does not survive long. When Camilla learns he will not overrule William, something in her behavior changes, and staff begin noticing her absence from gatherings she would normally never miss. The king had chosen not to force Charlotte's affection, but the decision did not create peace, it created distance, and Camilla's reaction would make that distance visible almost immediately. The first consequence is not a statement. It is an empty chair. Camilla quietly withdraws from a private family tea where Charlotte is expected to attend, telling Charles she sees no purpose in creating another uncomfortable encounter. What looks like restraint feels far more serious inside the family. Catherine worries Charlotte will blame herself. William suspects the withdrawal is a form of pressure, and Charles watches his wife retreat from people she had spent years trying to join. Camilla continues every formal duty expected of her, but private invitations become different. House staff notice that Charles still accepts family gatherings, while the Queen Consort begins hesitating whenever Charlotte will be present. These meetings are optional family occasions rather than official engagements, meaning attendance is personal, not required by royal duty. That difference matters because every absence now feels deliberate. Camilla tells herself she's preventing another confrontation. Yet the pattern creates exactly what she hoped to avoid: a visible gap inside the family. Catherine sees the danger quickly. Charlotte notices the empty place at tea and asks whether Camilla stayed away because of her. Her mother answers firmly that adults are responsible for their own choices and their own feelings. Charlotte does not have to repair every person around her simply because she spoke honestly. The girl looks relieved, but the relief does not last. She asks whether the Queen is angry. Catherine says hurt and anger are not the same thing, and that answer leaves Charlotte quieter than before. Camilla sits alone later and tells Charles she feels reduced to someone who must ask whether his grandchildren are comfortable before entering a room. The king listens, but this time he does not simply defend her pain. He tells his wife that staying away will not make Charlotte trust her. Withdrawal may protect Camilla from another painful moment, that it also places emotional weight back onto the child. For the first time, Charles says the repair must begin without expecting the word grandmother. William hears that Camilla is considering skipping an upcoming private birthday gathering as well. His concern hardens immediately. If every absence follows Charlotte into another room, then his daughter may begin believing she controls whether adults appear or disappear. That, he says to Catherine, is precisely the burden they wanted to prevent. She agrees, but she also notices something unexpected in Charlotte. The girl is not pleased that Camilla is gone. Camilla returns briefly after the tea has ended and stops beside the untouched place setting prepared for her. She rests one hand on the chair but never sits. The empty seat suddenly feels less like protection and more like surrender. Charlotte had refused a word, not a person. And once William understood that distinction, he encouraged one private conversation that would change the direction of the entire conflict. No king sits between them. No future king speaks for either side. Catherine waits elsewhere. Charles is deliberately absent. And for the first time since the crisis began, Charlotte and Camilla face one another without the machinery of monarchy surrounding the conversation. The young princess has not changed her mind about the word that started everything. Camilla knows that what changes instead is more difficult. Both finally explain what they believe the other had taken from them. Catherine only helps arrange the meeting after Charlotte says she wants it. William agrees on one condition: nobody will use the conversation to demand an apology or force a new name. Charles tells Camilla the same thing before she enters reconciliation. He says, "Must begin without conditions that matters because a royal title is a formal style used in public duty, while a family name carries private emotion." For once, those two worlds are being kept apart. Charlotte brings the same photograph of Diana that had been at the center of the earlier hurt. She places it on the table and tells Camilla she thought the Queen wanted her to stop caring about someone important to her father. The words are simple, but they land hard. Camilla does not interrupt. She admits the photograph touched an insecurity she should never have placed on a child. Hearing Diana discuss, she says, can make her feel as if she will always be compared with a memory she can never compete against. Charlotte answers without anger. She says she was never asking Camilla to compete. The sentence disarms her. For years, the Queen has carried an adult fear into every mention of Diana. But the young princess had only been asking questions about her own family. Camilla finally sees how much history had been pushed onto a child who never asked to inherit it. Camilla then apologizes directly. She says she was wrong to suggest Charlotte could become too attached to someone she never knew, and wrong again to describe those memories as confusing. She does not ask for the word grandmother. That omission matters enormously. Charlotte accepts the apology, but says she still wants to call her Camilla in private when appropriate and use her proper title at official moments. The Queen agrees. Charlotte reaches the door, then stops. She turns back and asks whether Camilla will come to the upcoming family birthday gathering after all. For the first time, the invitation is personal rather than ceremonial. Camilla is caught off guard, but she says yes. They had finally found a private peace, but the public knew nothing about the conversation. And when Charlotte and Camilla appeared together days later, a single gesture became the image everyone wanted to interpret. The public does not hear Charlotte's private conversation with Camilla. It sees something smaller and in many ways more powerful. Outside Windsor, cameras capture the young princess stepping from a family gathering, pausing beside the Queen and offering her hand rather than the familiar embrace observers expected. Within hours, the image dominates broadcasts and front pages. To outsiders, it looks like rejection. Inside the family, however, the gesture means almost the exact opposite. William knows every movement will be examined before the family even arrives. Catherine knows it too. Rumors have already started circulating around Windsor, and photographers are waiting for a sign that the private tension is real. This gathering carries a second burden. People are no longer watching only for duty. They are watching Charlotte. Her parents refuse to stage affection. They give her one instruction only: be respectful and be yourself. Camilla feels the pressure the moment the images begin spreading. One front page runs the photograph of Charlotte extending her hand beneath the words, "The Royal Distance." Television panels replay the exchange again and again, treating the missing embrace as evidence that the family rupture has deepened. Near Windsor Castle, a crowd watches the royal cars depart. Some applaud the young princess for standing her ground. Others argue that no child should become the center of an adult conflict. Within hours, one private boundary has become a national argument. Camilla sees the headline and feels humiliated. Charlotte had been polite. The handshake was not punishment. It was the careful middle ground they had agreed could exist. Yet public interpretation turns that progress into apparent rejection. Charles immediately considers whether the palace should clarify what happened. William objects. Any statement explaining Charlotte's feelings, he argues, would expose his daughter to even more scrutiny and force her private emotions into public debate. Camilla surprises them both. She agrees with William. The Queen tells Charles that Charlotte should not be used to repair her image, even if silence leaves the newspapers free to misunderstand them. That choice changes something important. For the first time, Camilla protects the boundary instead of fighting it. Charlotte later sees the newspaper beside William and asks whether she embarrassed Camilla again. Her father answers that respectful honesty is not cruelty. Adults, he says, must stop demanding that children perform feelings simply because cameras are watching. The headlines called it rejection. The palace feared division. But the real verdict would come quietly inside the family when Charlotte and Camilla met again with no cameras waiting outside. In the end, Charlotte never takes back the sentence that shocked Windsor. She does something more meaningful. She proves that refusing a title does not have to mean refusing a relationship. Camilla, after weeks of hurt and defensiveness, accepts something equally difficult. Belonging cannot be created by royal position, and affection becomes weaker when demanded. What began as an apparent insult ultimately forces 3 generations of the monarchy to confront the difference between ceremonial loyalty and genuine family trust. Charlotte arrives at the final family gathering beside William and Catherine with no special instructions waiting for her. Charles enters with Camilla, and this time the Queen does not hesitate at the door or question whether she should stay. No advisors manage the seating. No one prepares a careful reunion. When private conversation begins, Charlotte uses Camilla's name naturally. Later, when the occasion becomes formal, she uses the proper royal title, meaning the official form of address required by rank and duty. The difference is small, but it proves something powerful. Respect does not have to pretend to be intimacy. Camilla stops waiting for the word that caused the entire conflict. Instead, she asks Charlotte about something the young princess mentioned during their private conversation, and the question catches Charlotte off guard. She realizes she has been remembered. More importantly, she feels listened to rather than managed. Charles notices the change and finally relaxes, not because his wife has won the title he once hoped she would receive, but because bitterness no longer controls the room. William sees it too. For the first time in weeks, the future king no longer looks prepared to defend his daughter from the next emotional blow. Catherine understands what the adults had missed from the beginning. Charlotte's refusal forced the family to confront Diana's memory without treating it like a threat. The younger generation was never creating the conflict by remembering her. The older generation was carrying fear about what those memories might mean. Camilla finally accepts that she does not have to replace Diana to build something real with Charlotte. and the young princess learns that protecting the grandmother she never knew does not require punishing the woman standing before her. Charlotte pauses beside Camilla as the gathering ends and asks whether she will come to another family occasion the following week. There is no forced embrace, no demanded title, and no grand declaration. The queen simply says she would like that very much. And that became the lasting meaning of Charlotte's refusal. She never called Camilla her grandmother. Yet by the end, she no longer needed rejection to defend the people she loved. The family stopped fighting over a word and finally began building a relationship that could survive without it.